Fairy asked us to deliver a message to Dao's friend Peng Lai to escape quickly. On the other side, Linlang also obeys the order of Drunken Sword Immortal at this moment. She returned to the village where her parents lived and asked her father to return to Kunlun. Linlang's father was taken aback when he heard that Drunken Sword Immortal had an important matter to discuss with him. But soon after, he heard the sound of the heaven's drum. Without saying a word, he threw an item to Linlang, asking her to stay here to accompany her mother and close all the external Earth convergence formations. He said that this was the subduing relic for this formation key here, and asked her to keep it properly. Before leaving, he also said to his wife, "I'll be back soon. Today, I still trouble my wife to wash up and make some soup." After Linlang's father left, her mother said to her, "Mother, as a mortal, wanting to be with Dad in the mortal realm for a lifetime, is it the greatest difficulty for Dad?" Linlang, upon hearing this, said, "There aren't many things in this world that can make Dad feel uneasy. A relationship like Dad and Mom's is envied by others, comparable to immortals that people admire, Kunlun's heaven's drum being one of the 2 sacred relics that can resonate throughout the 9 heavens and 10 earths." At this moment, the celestial spark of Fanzhong Mountain, Shuyu of Ying Province, Shang the Cloud-born of Peng Lai. Several people all heard this deafening drum sound. Shang the Cloud-born couldn't help but say, "What a joke." But at this moment, he seemed to have sensed something. He then turned around and said, "Master, you have returned." And at this moment, Drunken Sword Immortal was still tapping on the heaven's drum at Kunlun Sword Pavilion. Behind him, another person said, "How can a battle-hardened butcher like you be so reckless?" The person was none other than Linlang's father. He asked Drunken Sword Immortal why he had called him back. Why didn't he wait a bit longer? By announcing it so urgently, isn't he afraid of causing a big stir? Immediately, he threw the wine in his hand to Drunken Sword Immortal. Drunken Sword Immortal exclaimed, "Sleazy old flirt," he said. "I didn't call you back to discuss, but to clean up." Drunken Sword Immortal said that the spiritual chi of this world has been depleted, and beings relying on spiritual chi cultivation will soon realize that they need to either plunder resources, enhance their cultivation level to ascend, or advance to a stage where their lifespan can sustain them through this period. Otherwise, they will either be plundered or have their lifespan drained and perish in despair. He urged Linlang's father to admit that the heaven and earth annihilation has begun. At this moment, the mountain Gus Hen, the solitary Polona fairy, has been knocked down from the stage by a Shifu. She has been suppressed under Mountain Gus Hen. Qingshu Chenjun is very anxious watching this scene. But they cannot help. Qingshu asked Chenjun to take 2 fairies back to Peng Lai to deliver a message, while he would stay behind to prepare to wrap himself in shedding dust and disappear into the vast sea. Chenjun is worried that if he wraps himself in shedding dust, his celestial tribulation will also be triggered. Qingshu, who has always been afraid of celestial tribulation, is prepared to risk it all. He wants to test if he can break through Master's restrictions. But he was interrupted by a shout of, "Stop!" As a fluctuation of spiritual chi in the air, Shang the Cloud-born and Akiran appeared. He scolded Qingshu as a traitor and said, "Did I give you restrictions for you to use like this?" Qingshu and the others quickly called out for Shifu and Grand Elder Lufeng. Shang the Cloud-born looked at Shedding Dust, who was crossing the tribulation side, and said, "A 13-year-old golden core." Then he asked the 2 of them to stay here to protect Shedding Dust. He then walked inside with Lufeng. They have come to look for the great immortal of Illustrious. He said that he was ordered by the master to invite him to Peng Lai for a meeting. Illustrious replied indifferently, "Lufeng Dao's friend, the divine beast Kiran, is the most noble and virtuous creature in this world, never harming others due to its bloodline constraints. If I do not harm you all, how can you invite me?" Then he said, "Just based on the Ninefold Realm's record of mountains and seas in your hands, my friend." Shang the Cloud-born clarified to him not to misunderstand. He said that Lufeng Elder and the Ninefold Realm's record of mountains and seas were just here to assist him on his journey. If Minor Dao does not act, you can conveniently take us back. Please ask Shifu to come. He then asked, Can illustrious Venerable move? Illustrious said, That's it, and then let Shang the Cloudborn show him the way. And at this moment, Shang the Cloudborn was staring at the place where solitary Polono was suppressed, while Illustrious asked him lightly, Why does this junior want to intervene even in the internal affairs of my Gus Hin? Shang the Cloudborn did not respond further, but instead said, Venerable, please follow me. Meanwhile, on Kunlun Mountain, Bai Li Zhong suddenly arrived. He asked someone to pass a message to the drunken sword immortal. He asked the sword pavilion to hand over the murderer of his younger brother. Disciple Chen Aning, the drunken sword immortal of the sword pavilion, looked angry upon hearing this. Not to mention whether your younger brother was killed by my family's little sixth. Even if it is true, it would require a demon-slaying mission. Why do you have the audacity to come to the sword pavilion to ask for people? I haven't even counted the injuries caused to me by your disciple. But Bai Li Zhong said, Just based on what happened 500 years ago. The Bai Li clan paid almost the entire family's price by assassinating their own clan member, Bai Li Xingtian, thereby ending the heaven and earth annihilation. Also, by your oath to protect the last bloodline of the Bai Li clan, which is me and my people, Linlang's father asked from the side. What will you do if we don't hand over the person? Bai Li Zhong said lightly. If Kunlun betrays me, then I can only move my entire clan back to Mang Mountain. It seems that Linlang's father then said on the side, It seems there is no other way. We can only inconvenience Bai Li Dao's friend. He then looked towards the drunken sword immortal, who was now looking displeased. He continued, After all, you see, I can't beat this battle-hardened butcher either. Attinger has been placed in the Jade Pool since he was seriously injured last time. The Golden Lotus in the Jade Pool at this moment. It emits strands of golden energy. These golden energy strands are helping Auding to recover his body. At this moment, spiritual chi suddenly surged chaotically around Audinger's body. Yu Qi, who had been standing by the side all along, also noticed this, but they did not know what was happening. At the same time as providing energy to Audinger from the Golden Lotus, it also transmitted through the sea of consciousness to Shedding Dust. At this moment, Shedding Dust is enduring the celestial tribulation of the Golden Core and struggling to support it. Several wounds have appeared on his body. He is now just waking up. He doesn't have any spirit artifact and talisman on him. It is nearly impossible for him to directly face this celestial thunder. He doesn't know how much longer he can hold on. His original plan was to cultivate his body at the Foundation establishment stage, but now it's impossible. He overslept for too long this time. But just at this moment, Shedding Dust suddenly felt an inexplicable force gathering throughout his body. He couldn't help but feel a little doubtful. At the same time, a Golden Lotus in the Jade Pool on the other side suddenly shattered, making the treasure-gathering immortal in the pavilion stamp his feet in anger. He cursed that old drunkard for plotting this. Yu Qi also asked him on the side, Is there any danger for my junior sister to advance? Treasure-gathering immortal snarled angrily. There is a danger of farting, a child who cultivates chi refining and advances to Foundation establishment. With the blessing of the Golden Lotus, what other dangers could there be? Why is the Jade Pool Golden Lotus regarded as the top-notch product in Kunlun? Isn't it because it possesses the most unpredictable auspicious chi between heaven and earth, turning bad luck into good fortune? After saying that, he took out an abacus and prepared to keep accounts. Healing injuries is one thing, but one must be cautious with the Golden Lotus. Just then, another Golden Lotus exploded, followed by all the Golden Lotuses in the Jade Pool bursting into golden powder in an instant. Yu Qi couldn't help but wonder why so much money had to be spent. And at this moment, treasure gathering had completely exploded. He grabbed Yu Qi by the collar and angrily said, Is this junior sister possibly the reincarnation of the misfortune star? Soon, a deafening voice rang out. Damn drunkard! I'm going to fight you! Meanwhile, on the other side, the drunken sword immortal couldn't help but sneeze loudly. Looking at shedding dust on the other side, as the golden lotus withered, he successfully passed the golden core celestial tribulation. Seeing his composed appearance, walking on water with ease, there was no trace of his previous embarrassed state. Qingshu couldn't help but tears welled up in his eyes. Shedding dust then bowed to the two of them and thanked them for their protection. Both of them also cared about how Shedding Dust was doing at the moment. Shedding Dust then said, somewhat puzzled, "It's okay, I just got hit by a few lightning strikes. It's strange to say that a few times I thought I wouldn't be able to avoid them, but each time turned out to be a blessing in disguise." Later, he also asked if the two of them had used any spirit artifact Qingshu. The two of them looked embarrassed and said that they hadn't been of much help. Then the two said, "Let's hurry back to Panglai as soon as possible. It's not suitable to stay here for long." Shedding Dust was taken aback when he heard this, and asked them what had happened with solitary Polona Venerable. And at this time, on the other side, Ottinger has also successfully advanced. Mingzhu is still on the side, advising him while grabbing Yuchi's collar, saying to the master that if you break him, he won't have many pieces left. It might be more cost-effective to let Uncle Master owe you a favor. Yuchi is still on the side asking, why is the sea of consciousness tightly closed, while her divine soul is still asleep? The treasure-gathering immortal then explained with a frustrated expression that the Lotus Pond healing was not about using the golden lotus to repair the physical body, but rather to stimulate one's own potential for self-healing with the power of the golden lotus. She was fundamentally injured, and advancing at the most inappropriate time has further exacerbated her situation. Now, with a foundation establishment physical body, it will take some time for her to fully recover. Most likely, she triggered her physical body's self-protection mechanism, forcibly sealing her spiritual sense and causing her spiritual chi to sink, leading to a state of dormancy. Yuchi then asked if Ottinger was in any danger. Treasure-gathering Mister is about to be infuriated. He only replied with one sentence, "No! Get lost!" Meanwhile, on the other side, Shedding Dust has already found out that the solitary Polona fairy was suppressed by his Sherfu at the foot of the mountain, and Illustrious was invited by Shan the Cloudborn to go to Panglai Qingshu. Though he doesn't know the reason, he speculates that it should be related to Kuan Luan sounding Heaven's drum. He suggests it would be safer to return to Panglai first. But Shedding Dust, after hearing this, walked towards Mountain Gus Hen and Qingshu. Unable to help but feel doubtful, Shedding Dust analyzed. Looking at the message conveyed by solitary Polona Venerable through the little fairy. She might have been suppressed. Perhaps it is related to us. Since senior brother dares to leave us here, it shows that he is confident in keeping the great immortal of Illustrious restrained. Therefore, Shedding Dust decided to give it a try to see if he could repay her favor right now. Meanwhile, on the other side, Shan the Cloudborn also brought Illustrious to Sherfu Kenwu the Sage. Meeting face to face, Illustrious Dao's friend said, "It has been several decades since we last parted. Your elegance surpasses the past, Illustrious," with a profound meaning. Illustrious responded enigmatically, "How can it be so?" Immediately, Kenwu the Sage spoke on behalf of the disciple. "Disciple, if there is any offense, let me apologize on his behalf." However, Illustrious replied, "No need, I was just curious." As the leader of the Celestians, what are your thoughts at this moment? And Shan the Cloudborn, who heard these words, replied. He was stunned by the surprise, but Kenwu the Sage said calmly, "For nearly 1,000 years, I have hesitated to come here, only to realize it was for this moment. At this time, Shedding Dust and a few others have just started climbing the other side of the mountain. They were blocked by a pair of feet in the way," she said. "You can't go through. For the sake of Junior Sister, I'll pretend I didn't see you. For the sake of Sherfu, I won't let you touch Junior Sister. Don't you roll yet?" Kunlun Mountain Sword Pavilion at this moment, Drunken Sword Immortal asked unbelievably, "Father Linlang, say it again. Are you also a Celestian?" Father Linlang was about to explain, but before he could finish, the entire Kunlun mountain was filled with the sound of heavy chains. The disciples were nervous, saying, "Quickly protect the great formation." Father Linlang had already flown out, equally speechless. Can a battle-hardened butcher listen to people finish their words? Father Linlang had been wanting to explain the true meaning of Celestian, but this blockhead drunken sword immortal never gave him the chance. The two of them were engaged in a heated battle on this side. On the other side at the same time, Kenwu the sage was also explaining that Celestian does not exist solely to slaughter mortals, at least not initially. Shang the Cloud-born was even more puzzled upon hearing this. Kenwu the sage then called out, "Illustrious Taoist friend," and said, "Enforcing heaven's law, walking the way with my life is what Taoist friend you mentioned. Can we adjust and broaden our views?" Upon hearing this, Illustrious replied, "Indeed," and mentioned that he also found this path. The great Tao then asked Kenwu the sage if he was willing to go together. Meanwhile, Drunken Sword Immortal finally understood the true meaning of Celestian and asked why it hadn't been mentioned earlier. "Take a look at this big pit. You have to give me a chance to speak, so it's up to you." Linlang's father could only sigh helplessly. He said that it was Kenwu the sage who first contacted them, the 9 advanced cultivators proficient in deduction. They wanted to find the laws and origins of heaven and earth annihilation. However, due to the importance of the cultivation world, they couldn't afford any mistakes, so they kept it a secret until the safe results were achieved. With each generation of cultivators experiencing it, they have adapted to the heaven and earth annihilation. It seems to have existed since the beginning of the world, and will occur when the population of all living beings in the world reaches a limit. It is when the spiritual chi of heaven and earth becomes exhausted. In the world of cultivation, living beings are bound to kill, fight, and plunder each other, until the appearance of the strongest destroyer of the world, waiting for it to devour all beings or be destroyed. Only heaven and earth annihilation can bring it to an end. And they consulted numerous ancient texts, through comparison and deduction, discovered the appearance of the world annihilator. The end of heaven and earth annihilation is actually due to a boundary. Or perhaps these two boundaries should be considered as one and the same. The drunken sword immortal also understood when he heard this. It's the number of people. Yes, it's the total number of sentient beings with open spiritual intelligence. Immediately, Linlang's father added, "However, we are far from being able to draw any conclusions. Later, I vowed to accompany Wanwan for 100 years, and did not participate further." He couldn't help but feel puzzled by how things had evolved to this point, and immediately asked about Kenwu the sage. However, at this time, Kenwu the sage here was being questioned by Illustrious. As the most massive group of beings among the spirits, even the ancient beasts with primordial bloodlines find it extremely challenging to activate spiritual intelligence, not to mention ordinary birds and animals. He asked Kenwu the sage why they couldn't transform this world into a place where all beings could easily cultivate, solely based on humans being the most supreme among the spirits. Kenwu the sage then lightly replied with wispy beard, "It's my fault for being a lazy shopkeeper after all. However, during my seclusion in these years, based on the recorded heaven and earth annihilation, I have deduced an interesting argument regarding the fallen cultivator ranks and the number of beings. The total count is important, but the individual share of spiritual chi is crucial." He then immediately mentioned that he had just emerged from seclusion, and was thinking about how to present his argument. Just as he said this, he raised his hand and grabbed Illustrious by the wrist, saying, "Come, Taoist friend, please bear witness with me." Watching Illustrious' nervous expression, and seeing Kenwu the sage Clear Breeze's smiling face, no one knew what the next twist in the story would be. The little boy who looks very similar to Shedding Dust is called Clear Breeze. He also has a younger brother named Bright Moon. On that day, someone came to visit, but little Clear Breeze declined the visitor by using Mr. Cloud Wanderer as an excuse. The person felt it was not appropriate to insist and had to leave. Clear Breeze and Bright Moon. The two are pages of the grand historian Li Chafeng. In the eyes of the people, Li Chafeng is a figure like an exiled deity, with a constant stream of people coming to seek divination from him every day. But in their eyes, Mr. is also a flesh-and-blood mortal, eating and drinking like ordinary people, with only one strange habit. It's that his daily sitting, lying down, eating, and drinking are all done exactly according to the time, just like a perfectly precise sundial. Not only does he act this way, but he also enforces the same strict rules on Clear Breeze Bright Moon. Of course, there are exceptions as well. That's when Yuan Tian Gang, Mr. Yuan, arrives. Li Chunfeng must surely engage in an intense battle with him, creating a scene of chaos and darkness. It's thanks to Clear Breeze Bright Moon that the two of them can have half a day of leisure. So, after preparing some refreshments, the two of them will bid farewell to Mr. After the two left, Yuan Tian Gang couldn't help but praise. "Your Clear Breeze servant is indeed clever." Li Chunfeng then casually remarked, "He's just too clever." The two indeed had some ulterior motives. Younger brother Bright Moon urged his brother to leave quickly, saying, "It will be too late if we don't return by the hour." Clear Breeze suddenly changed the subject and asked Bright Moon if he wanted to play a bit longer. However, Bright Moon dared not, as he was afraid he could not deceive Mr. Clear Breeze, however, remained calm. Normally, he wouldn't dare either. But he felt that today he had taken advantage of the right time, place, and people. Why not give it a try? What he referred to as the auspicious time is referring to the sundial. Today happens to be a heavy snowfall. Mr. cannot rely on it to tell the time. As for Bright Moon's concern about whether it will clear up in the afternoon, for Bright Moon, this is not a problem. After all, he has followed Mr. for so many years, so he does have the ability to forecast the weather. And geographical advantage refers to clepsydra. The mechanism of the water clock uses water flow to drive the sinking of the water arrow, with marks below, and measures time by the marks on the arrow. So, preventing the water from flowing becomes crucial. However, Bright Moon still worries that if the water clock is damaged, Mr. will definitely find out. Clear Breeze said he is stupid. Now that water is freezing outside, let's extinguish the charcoal fire. Then the water clock will freeze. Adding Mr. Calm, in this dwelling of ours, we never hear the morning bell or evening drum. It is what is called an advantageous location. Bright Moon was criticized by him, which made her speechless with a furrowed brow. He pondered for a long time and only said, "How can we solve the problems caused by that person?" Clear Breeze was speechless. "You were truly foolish today, Mr. Yuan. They could spend days and nights playing a game to the death, yet still have time to care about us." People couldn't help but murmur. Right after the two of them finished speaking here, Yuan Tian Gang over there sneezed. Clear Breeze Bright Moon had already run out happily. They looked at the two of them playing chess with a serious expression. It is indeed within little Clear Breeze expectations. The two of them unconsciously played until noon. Bright Moon started to worry and wanted to go back. Clear Breeze said that Mr. is not a deity, and since it's still snowing, the footsteps are probably frozen by now. He doesn't want to go back yet. And the two people over there are still deeply engrossed in playing chess, as if they are unaware of everything. And here, as the bell rings, Bright Moon said it's already midnight. Clear Breeze's heart tightened at the sound of the bell. He couldn't help but complain, as Bright Moon was reporting the time like a timepiece. It's better to go home. Bright Moon also noticed. Are you feeling guilty too? After returning, the two of them checked the sundial for the first time, and it was still covered by heavy snow. The water inside the clepsydra has frozen into ice, but it is still functioning properly. Clear Breeze couldn't help but blame Bright Moon, partly because of your many concerns. But both of them just went to pay respects to Mr. Li Chunfeng then said a word. Late by 3/4. Clear Breeze listened with a cold sweat on his face. This Mr. is too amazing. Li Chunfeng, on the other hand, said lightly, Astronomical song of walking the sky. Copy it 3 times. The two of them also looked stunned after hearing it. Astronomical song of walking the sky. Isn't finished yet? Do we need to go urge the author? Clear Breeze is completely convinced after returning. This mister is really amazing. The two people playing chess on the other side also stopped. Yuan Tian Gang couldn't help but ask, "While playing chess with me, do you still have the leisure to silently count the burning incense sticks?" Li Chunfeng listened but remained silent, only looking at the incense burner beside him, lost in thought. Shedding Dust had just woken up. Ottinger is unconscious again due to severe injuries. At this moment, Penglai, the celestial mountain, is also not peaceful. I thought Kenwu the Sage was a major villain, but this misunderstood white-haired old man proved everything with his actions. He pulled the great immortal of Illustrious with him to jointly witness the unity of heaven and earth, the great Tao. At this moment, Celestial Spark also arrived. He intercepted Shang the Cloudborn, who was about to rush up. There was also a voice behind them. Senior brother Spark was from Ying Province, and Shuyu also came. She asked if the Heaven's Drum of Kunlun was really being played. Celestial Spark looked at the two in the sky and muttered, "It seems to be true." At this moment, Kanwu the Sage and Illustrious were hovering over Penglai, the celestial mountain. Illustrious was anxious, while Kanwu the Sage remained calm. "You and I are both at the divine transformation stage. Even if you use the Penglai Great Formation, you will not be able to trap me." "How could that be?" "With your spiritual chi still present, Kanwu the Sage has an innocent look on his face." When he heard this, he turned pale, not wanting to give him a way out. "Are you out of your mind?" Great Immortal of Illustrious, although he hasn't reached divine transformation perfection, he is still one of the top figures in the world. Kanwu the Sage dares to say these words. Could it be that he already has a certain level of confidence in his heart? Shuyu is also a little worried. If senior brother wants to suppress him, should we lend a hand? But before a few people could decide, Illustrious suddenly lowered his head, as if he had made a decision. His body also changed. 3 pairs of colorful wings instantly appeared. He transformed into his true form, and before the others could react, he turned into a stream of light and disappeared into the sky in an instant. Shang the Cloudborn cursed under his breath. He asked his martial uncles if that was the light escape technique of the great immortal of Illustrious, known as the fastest light escape in the universe. Celestial Spark calmly advised him not to be anxious. "You're sure Fu Kanwu the Sage is the #1 divine transformation perfection cultivator in the world?" Kanwu the Sage did indeed look calmly at the brilliant light that Illustrious had turned into. After a moment, he slowly closed his eyes. Then, he pointed to the sky with one hand and to the ground with the other, chanting words under his breath. All that could be heard was the mantra echoing throughout the entire space, the boundlessness of heaven and earth. At the same time, the 3 of them, practitioners of Mountain Gus and Shedding Dust, were blocked by a woman who suddenly appeared in their path. However, this woman suddenly looked towards the sky and called out, "Master!" Shortly after, she flew towards the transformed form of Illustrious, and just as she was about to reach him, a black hole suddenly appeared in the space. Illustrious figure instantly passed through the black hole. When he reappeared, he was shocked because he had returned to the side of Kanwu the Sage. And he had been surrounded by spatial laws. The spatial fluctuations surrounding him in concentric circles indicated that no matter where he flew, he would eventually return to the original place. It's so scary that even Shang the Cloudborn didn't expect that Master's understanding of spatial laws had reached such a level. Celestial Spark, however, remains as calm as ever. Everyone knows that the Penglai cultivation technique controls life itself. It bestows both decline and prosperity because life and death are 2 sides of the same coin. At this point, Illustrious has already gone mad, Kanwu the Sage. "Even if you trap me for 1,000 years, what does it matter? My lifespan is not shorter than yours." Kanwu the Sage, however, remained silent and slowly raised both hands. As he uttered tenfold oblivion from his mouth, his palms also instantly struck. And at this moment, Illustrious looked desperate, feeling like his body was being devoured by something. And with the collision in space, a black hole vortex appeared right where Illustrious was just now. And following that, there was a deafening explosion that shook the sky. This black hole seems to be able to devour everything. Around where it appeared, apart from Kanwu the Sage, there was not even a trace of light, as if a flashbang had been thrown. Except for the black spatial fissure, you couldn't see anything. And as the fissure slowly healed bit by bit, the surrounding scenery has returned to its original state once again. And at this moment, Shang the Cloudborn is with that woman. Both of them are tense, with their mouths wide open, shouting, "Sherfu!" The difference is that the woman's great immortal of illustrious, Sherfu, seems to have really disappeared into the rift in space. Kanwu the Sage was originally a half-step immortal, the most promising one to ascend to become an almighty being in nearly 100 years. Even though he was already invincible, his body still fell, and the Tao was lost. Last time we talked about the heaven and earth annihilation approaching. The spiritual chi between heaven and earth is already very thin. Ottinger and senior brother Lee Etherlin fought hard and returned to Celestian with injuries, bringing back news. Kunlun has sounded the heavens drum to send a message to the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Kanwu the Sage has come out to invite Illustrious to Penglai. The two have different understandings of heaven and earth annihilation. To restore the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, Illustrious intends to slaughter all mortals in the world, using the method of trim the end to self-preserve, while Kanwu the Sage chooses cut the head method. He uses the power of spatial laws. He effortlessly defeated Illustrious, who is also at the divine transformation stage. However, the power of spatial laws was too strong, and the Penglai Palace almost disappeared by accident. Fortunately, the celestial spark formation was there to prevent it. He protected Shang the Cloudborn and Shuyu, but at this moment, Kanwu the Sage is the most dangerous. Celestial Spark asks Shuyu to quickly activate the Mountain Protection Great Formation. Shuyu did not dare to hesitate and immediately turned around. But Kanwu the Sage appeared very calm, showing absolutely no intention of entering the Penglai Great Formation. Celestial Spark is also anxious. Aren't you entering the formation yet? You have killed a divine transformation stage cultivator. You have incurred such a great karma. Do you still not want to undergo celestial tribulation? Do you really want to accompany the old Taoist to face celestial thunder? Kanwu the Sage calmly stroked his beard, remaining composed as always. He is unaware. Celestial Spark is trying to help him withstand Celestial Thunder's attacks. Heavenly Star and Earthly Evil Formation. He has already refined 71 volcanoes. But no one expected that he could come out of seclusion so quickly and immediately trigger Celestial Thunder, and now Celestial Spark has transformed into Dharma Body. He is prepared to use this Dharma Body to withstand the final volcano. The Penglai Great Formation beneath the feet of the Sage Kanwu has been activated, but he continues to say, "No rush, no rush," with his mouth. He then extended his palm, in which a faint spiritual chi appeared. He also spoke. "You look." The spiritual chi of heaven and earth has appeared, although it is not quite enough yet. Upon hearing his words, Celestial Spark was shocked and turned pale. "Are you planning to exterminate all Celestians?" Kanwu the Sage did not answer but instead asked. "Since ancient times, cultivators have become accustomed to heaven and earth annihilation. But is heaven and earth annihilation truly something that has existed since ancient times? For hundreds of years. I have searched through countless ancient scrolls. Yogwai's Saga and Mortal Emperor coexist, Grand Shaman and Fiend Deity dwell together. The spiritual chi in the world is so abundant. Additionally, above the divine transformation is the stage. There has never been a mention of ascension. The amount of information about Kanwu the Sage is really substantial. The tribulation cloud above the sky is even larger. With a thunderous roar, the first celestial thunder falls down. It struck the Dharma body of Celestial Spark. This man of few words has always been expressing his feelings through actions. Why would heaven and earth annihilation occur? Where did the cultivator go after ascending? This answer needs to be sought by you. Kanwu the Sage continued to say. It's not that I am lazy, rather it's because without the heart of Tao, perfecting the tribulation crossing would be in vain. No matter how I deduce it, the cause and effect of me and this world are still unresolved. Originally, it should have happened at this point. Celestial Spark finally understands what Kangwu the Sage wants to do. He shouted to stop him, but his body gradually moved away from Kangwu the Sage uncontrollably. Kangwu the Sage remained calm. He also closed his eyes. Heaven creates all things to nourish me. Yet I still have one thing to offer back to heaven. As he finished speaking, immediately, a stronger spiritual chi emerged between heaven and earth, and within Mount Penglai, 100 flowers bloomed together. Even in the desert, flowers bloomed, while the wilting golden lotus in the Kunlun jade pool miraculously bloomed again. The drunken sword immortal from Sword Pavilion and Linlang's father were shocked as they looked at the blooming flowers beside them. Celestial Spark held onto the visible spiritual chi in his palm for a long time, unwilling to let go, wondering what this troublemaker was thinking at the moment. Kangwu the Sage was willing to sacrifice himself in order to protect the path in his heart, and thus a half-step immortal disappeared in the world. If Shedding Dust knows about Master's situation, he does not know how to face it, nor does he know when Ottinger will wake up. The siblings, please meet soon. Have you heard of the fall of the whale? One whale falls, and all things come to life. This scene is very similar to what is happening in the astronomical song of Walking the Sky at this moment. Heaven and earth annihilation is causing the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to be on the verge of depletion. Kangwu the Sage from Penglai holds all living beings in the world in his heart. He first killed the great immortal of Illustrious. Later, he scattered all his cultivation level to repay the heavens and the earth. The majestic spiritual chi that suddenly appeared nurtures all things, causing flowers to bloom everywhere with a fragrant aroma permeating the air. On the towering peak of Penglai, Luthen Kirin gazes blankly in the direction of the dissipating Kangwu the Sage, where the Dharma body of Celestial Spark still stands between heaven and earth. Time seems to have stood still, with the only change being the increase of spiritual chi in the heavens and the earth. On the cliffs of Penglai, clusters of pink flowers continue to bloom incessantly. Shan the Cloudborn has a dull expression. He never expected that Sherfu would choose to sacrifice himself, repaying kindness to the world. With Kangwu the Sage's majestic would attribute spiritual chi nourishing the world, the first to benefit are the flowers and plants. Also benefiting is Cloud Mist, who also possesses would attribute spiritual chi. Accompanied by a tinkling sound, a drop of liquid dripped onto Cloud Mist's face. Originally needing 30 to 50 years to reform, Cloud Mist slowly opened her eyes at this moment. She touched the liquid on her face, looking completely bewildered. She then lazily stretched, while on the opposite side of Cloud Mist, Skywinter Grandpa and his children also stood guard on the side. Cloud Mist raised her head and slowly called out to Patriarch. At this moment, Shuyu covered her face with both hands, sobbing softly. The unidentified liquid just now was evidently her tears. Cloud Mist, puzzled, continued to inquire why Patriarch was crying. Meanwhile, on the other side, a fox with pink fur all over its body. It also shed pink tears. Fairy of Verdant Hillfox race, due to witnessing the fall of Master Illustrious, was extremely furious and revealed her true form. At this moment, the giant fox kept emitting mournful cries, causing the mountain of Mountain Gus Hen to collapse under her rage. And at the same time, Qingshu with a black line on his face, holding Shedding Dust in one hand, flying down with Chunjun in hand. He kept reminding Shedding Dust that his Dantian was not stable yet, and he must not engage in combat. Anyway, he wouldn't stand a chance in a fight, so just leave the escape plan to us. But Shedding Dust is also worried. How could he, who is only at the Foundation establishment stage, escape the pursuit of someone from the soul separation stage? But Qingshu reassures him that we can't escape the spiritual abilities and Taoist spells of a soul separation fairy. But now, because of her anger, she has revealed her true form. A 5th-grade demonic beast could barely manage it. But he hadn't finished speaking yet. On the side, Chunjun's face changed dramatically as he called out, "Senior brother." At this moment, the pink fox's gaping bloody mouth was already close at hand. She instantly bit towards the three people. With a crisp sound, the fox bit fiercely, but there was a wisp of smoke coming out from its mouth, biting nothing but emptiness. Qingshu used wind evasion combined with shedding dust to escape a dangerous situation, and now they have appeared at the seaside. But his current condition is not great. Because he is using wind evasion to protect two people at the same time, the consumption is too high. Chunjun looked back at the fox and asked senior brother how long it would be until the next use of wind evasion. He wanted to go and distract the fox first. But Qingshu doesn't know when he will recover. On the side, shedding dust is also trying to divert the fox's attention. At this point, the fox is already heading towards the three of them. Qingshu felt regretful. If he were at the Golden Core stage now, perhaps he wouldn't be in such a sorry state. But it was also in this instant that he actually sensed the wood element spiritual chi of the patriarch. The seal formation on his body immediately started humming. On the other side, the fox continued to chase relentlessly, but ended up stepping on air. With no time left, Qingshu quickly guided the two to hold onto Chunjun firmly. Qingshu then asked on the side what Chunjun intended to do. At this time, the fox launched its attack, but Qingshu slowly closed his eyes, and silently muttered the mantra shedding dust. Chunjun and the other person clearly understood what he was going to do. With frightened expressions, they tried to stop him, but it was already too late. The words of the two individuals still lingered in the air, but Qingshu was already surrounded by a fluctuation of spiritual chi. At the same time, the fox's attack also arrived in an instant, fiercely shattering the ground, raising clouds of dust, obscuring the scene inside. However, Qingshu's voice still echoed in the space. To be this free, to become the wind itself, how truly unfettered and at ease. And in the reflection on the sea surface, a human figure could faintly be seen. But what exactly happened? Did the three of them manage to escape together? Let me narrate slowly. Kanwu the sage perished. 3 people encountered danger. But the crisis has just begun. Facing the pursuit of the verdant hillfox race, Qingshu forcibly broke the restrictions of Shan the Cloud-born in order to save shedding dust and Chunjun. He used wind evasion, a technique that can only be performed by a golden core cultivator. He took them to escape to this desolate sea. But he himself has now fallen into a coma. After waking up, he will still have to face the calamity of crossing the golden core. Fortunately, celestial thunder is targeting the cultivator's primordial spirit, so the celestial tribulation will not descend before Qingshu wakes up. At the same time, Shedding Dust also noticed the intense bloody killing intent here. He wants to see if he can set up a heaven-tainting grand formation to conceal the heavenly secrets and delay time for Qingshu. The place they are in now is full of demonic beast corpses. Shedding Dust judged that this should be a demonic beast cemetery, most likely located in the deepest part of the desolate sea. Because he can no longer sense the guiding talisman, just as Shedding Dust was investigating, Chunjun behind him spoke. He said senior brother may not be exhausted, but his primordial spirit is dormant. Shedding Dust was a little confused and turned to look at Chunjun. Chunjun continued saying, Senior brother's divine soul has a strong sensitivity to the power of laws of the wind, but he is still just a foundation establishment cultivator. If he keeps immersing himself in enlightenment alone, he might never wake up again. And at the same time Chunjun was worrying. On the earth of the Ninefold Realm, a deafening bell toll rang out. Celestial spark rang the Eastern Emperor Bell of Panlai. This Eastern Emperor Bell. It is a sacred relic that can resonate throughout the 9 heavens and 10 earths. It is feared, and shares the same reputation as Kunluan's heaven's drum. What is terrifying is that in one day, first Kunluan rang the heaven's drum, and now Panlai has rung the Eastern Emperor Bell. Far away at Kunluan's sword pavilion, Drunken Sword Immortal and Linlang's father both looked surprised. At the same time, Linlang's father reached out, and took Peng Lai's voice transmission talisman. The message they received was that King Wu the Sage had fallen. Meanwhile, the two in shedding dust deep in the desolate sea. They also heard the sound of the Eastern Emperor bell. Shedding Dust asked if Chun Jun has a voice transmission talisman on him. Chun Jun said yes, so he quickly searched for it. Shedding Dust is very worried. This must be a big deal. On the other hand, Drunken Sword Immortal, upon receiving the news, exclaimed 3 times, "Excellent! The #1 in the world, well deserved." He then extended his hand for Lin Lang's father to pass something over. Lin Lang's father did not react immediately and asked, "What do you need?" The Drunken Sword Immortal looked at him sideways and said, "A list of Celestians." Lin Lang's father hesitated a bit and said, "Even if you don't intend to identify the remaining Celestians, their followers and associates are numerous. People like Lady Long are also heavily involved. How can you cleanse them?" As Lin Lang's father spoke, he summoned a golden chain and said, "Even if you only kill Celestians, can you kill them all?" The Drunken Sword Immortal, trapped by the golden chain, looked angry. He said, "Even if it means self-destruction, I wouldn't hesitate to become a semi-immortal. I am not just a sword immortal in name. Release me." However, Lin Lang's father just smiled and squinted, saying, "I won't." He said there was a better way and asked Drunken Sword Immortal if he wanted to listen. On the other side, Chun Jun looked incredulous and said it's impossible. Holding the voice transmission talisman, he still couldn't believe it was not true. He said the patriarch has 1 foot already in the heavens. And at this moment, Shedding Dust stood beside, stunned and tears streaming down, but didn't speak a word. It wasn't until a while later that Shedding Dust calmed down. He wiped away his tears and said, "That is the Eastern Emperor bell. It cannot be fake." Chun Jun anxiously shouted, "Young martial uncle." But Shedding Dust was sadder than anyone at this moment. However, he knew the burden on his shoulders was heavy. He had to ensure the safety of everyone. Things had to be taken one step at a time. He told Chun Jun that first they needed to figure out the situation with Qinshu martial nephew and resolve it, and then they could think of a way to leave this. But he didn't say the rest and instead shouted, "Martial nephew, dodge!" Because behind Chun Jun, a tentacle-like fiend slowly rose up. On the other side, Lin Lang's father at the Sword Pavilion was discussing his strategy with the Drunken Sword Immortal. He said, "Firstly, Celestian wants to preserve cultivators by massacring mortals, as they do not wish to directly conflict with cultivators. After this battle, our Kunlun can unite with Peng Lai to send the disciples of the 2 major immortal sects to the mortal realm to preside. If he doesn't harm mortals, I won't harm him." At this moment, Lin Lang's father looked carefree and unrestrained, saying, "Whether it's rivers of blood or killing the young to get to the old, it's better to kill a few divine transformation and heaven and earth annihilation experts, and then it will be over. At worst, it will just return to the chaotic state from before." The originally irritable Drunken Sword Immortal has now calmed down. He said with a cold sweat, "Why does it sound like we are the villains?" Lin Lang's father, still wearing a smiling expression, replied, "Whether you're a villain or not, it's up to you. Do it! Damn it!" echoed the voice of Drunken Sword Immortal above Sword Pavilion. To find out what happens next, stay tuned for the next installment. Astronomical Song of Walking the Sky, the latest episode is here. The mysterious palace Lord Ao Miao reappears. As mentioned last time, Drunken Sword Immortal and Shedding Dust, and others learned at the same time that King Wu the Sage had fallen. The furious Drunken Sword Immortal was stunned by the momentum of Lin Lang's father. He is prepared to join forces with Peng Lai to send the immortal sect disciple to the mortal world to sit in town, even at the risk of killing back to the chaotic state. At the same time, Shedding Dust, and they encountered danger again in the depths of the desolate sea. A huge demonic beast with moonlight shining on its head attacked them. Fortunately, Shedding Dust reacted quickly and promptly alerted Chun Jun. At the same time, he also picked up Qinshu and flashed into the air. When the two of them arrived in the air, they only dared to turn back and take a look. But this glance was unimportant. Chun Jun's pupils trembled in shock again. This was the 5th grade demonic beast. Shedding Dust did not hesitate at all when he saw this demonic beast. He immediately handed Qinshu over to Chun Jun and had him fly upwards with Chun Jun. Immediately after that, the air burst under Shedding Dust's feet, and his body surged in the opposite direction like lightning. However, Shedding Dust's flight towards the demonic beast was not a suicidal act. Escaping together was not an option, so he had to take a risk. Having just advanced to the Golden Core stage, Shedding Dust, although having some insights, was unsure if he could successfully perform the technique. As Shedding Dust approached the demonic beast, he repeatedly reminded himself to remain stable, gentle, and flow through like a swimming fish in the ripples. Shortly after, a miraculous scene unfolded. Shedding Dust, who was about to be devoured by the demonic beast, mysteriously disappeared into a ripple of water. When he reappeared, Shedding Dust was already several dozen jong away behind the demonic beast, and muttered to himself, "Success!" The demonic beast behind him seemed to be in great pain. The huge body kept writhing. It seems to be deforming. Chun Jun looked at the scene with some uncertainty and asked young martial uncle, "Is it done?" But before Shedding Dust could respond, the pupils of both of them trembled again. The demonic beast was in some pain at first, but in just the blink of an eye, it returned to normal. The demonic beast at this moment has been thoroughly angered. It continues to make chirping noises in its mouth, then countless tentacles are raised high, ready to smash towards the sea surface, propelling itself out of the water. Shedding Dust quickly picked up Qinshu and Chun Jun, and they ran away upon seeing the situation. And that big fellow jumped into the air. It began to continuously rotate its body in the air. Along with its rotation, a dark green poisonous gas started to emerge from below its body. The rotation of its body was like an electric fan, accelerating the spread of this poisonous gas in all directions. Shedding Dust and the others were soon caught up by the poisonous gas. Chun Jun told him to put them down and run quickly. Shedding Dust, however, told him to shut up. If he kept rambling on, he would seal his spiritual sense. At this moment, in the distance, a pair of small hands were holding a gourd, absorbing the poisonous gas. Shedding Dust noticed the poisonous gas starting to recede, and couldn't help feeling some doubts. When he turned around to take a look, however, he found a small figure standing on the head of the demonic beast, and the poisonous gas was converging towards him. And this person, who is none other than the little catfish he had a chance encounter with in the vast sea before. At this moment, he was also wiping the cold sweat on his forehead. It sighed in relief. "Luckily I made it in time." And the previous demonic beast, upon seeing him, began to shrink little by little. In the end, it shrunk to look just like an ordinary jellyfish, with little difference. The small catfish then gave it a slap on the side. He angrily reprimanded him. "You treacherous fellow! Are you afraid that Palace Lord won't be able to find it?" At this moment, Shedding Dust and the two were still hiding in the distance. It seemed like there was no movement there. Shedding Dust suggested to leave now, while Chun Jun said to have his senior brother given to him. But at this moment, just then, a crystal ice flower appeared in the air, accompanied by a voice asking, "Is there something that I cannot know?" Later, Shedding Dust, the two found that they couldn't move. On the other side, the little catfish and the small jellyfish also found themselves unable to move. The gourds all fell to the ground. The sea water under their feet suddenly turned into ice blocks. The person who appeared was also a fairy sister who had a chance encounter with Shedding Dust before. He also asked, "Why has little Yuan lost her appetite recently?" "So you're setting up a private cafeteria here?" Then she immediately asked if General Wu was helped by you. Lil Wu was so scared after hearing this that he quickly admitted his mistake, saying, "This humble one is guilty and deserves death." "Palace Lord, please calm down." Then Palace Lord asked Little Yuan, if General Wu had not stopped you, would you have eaten those human cultivators? Little Yuan seemed unable to speak yet, just kept shaking his head and moving around, not sure what it meant to express. Just then, Palace Lord widened his eyes and said, "How many times do I have to say that humans are not to be eaten?" With her anger, the oppressive presence also spread in an instant. General Wu trembled and said, "Palace Lord, please calm down. It's fine if you don't accept us juniors, but if you don't take in those human cultivators with spiritual abilities, they might freeze to death." At this moment, Shedding Dust and Chunjun had already knelt down on the ground, with snow almost covering them. Qingshu was lying on the ground as well. He couldn't see any human figures at all. At that moment, another voice resounded. "Verdant Hill Meow pays respect to East Sea Palace Lord Ao. Meow is pursuing Shedding Dust, and their fox is chasing after us." She told Palace Lord Ao Meow that it was 3 thieves who kidnapped the female envoy of Mountain Gus Hen and escaped here. She then smilingly offered to take them away so as not to soil the sacred land of Palace Lord. At this moment, both Shedding Dust and the other person have a speechless expression on their faces. Chunjun is still holding 2 little fairies in his hands. "I don't know how to face what's coming next." Palace Lord Ao Meow. Will Palace Lord Ao Meow save Shedding Dust again? The spiritual chi of heaven and earth dries up, and a half-step immortal falls. Shedding Dust, who is far away at the desolate sea, is also facing numerous crises. Verdant Hills Meow is chasing after, but with East Sea's Palace Lord Ao Meow present, she dare not act recklessly. Later on, she attempted to abduct the female messenger Mountain Gus Hen under the pretext of the Shedding Dust. But how could Palace Lord Ao Meow be unaware of the Heaven's Drum and Chaos Bell ringing alternately in the ever-changing world? Gus Hen Illustrious and Punglai Kangwu the Sage both dedicated themselves to their respective pursuits, and Palace Lord Ao Meow naturally respected them. However, this has nothing to do with their Dragon Palace. She does not want to get involved in this karma. She waved her hand, signaling Meow to leave. Shedding Dust, Chunjun, and the others hiding on the side all breathed a sigh of relief. But Meow had tried to discuss philosophies with Ao Meow. In ancient times, Long Race and Verdant Hillfox Race both can demonstrate the Tao with the heavenly long body and the nine-tailed fox body. But now, due to the sparse spiritual chi in the world, the cultivation in the original form is difficult to progress. Therefore, one can only cultivate in human form. The stronger the bloodline, the harder it is to cultivate in human form, and this dilemma has lasted for a long time. Meow believes that this is the deficiency in the celestial Tao. My teacher intends to mend the heavens, and I am not afraid. She hopes to use this to influence Ao Meow. Ao Meow remained silent and fell into deep thought. She, too, is a half-step immortal and deeply understands the great Tao of heaven and earth. The ways of the myriad cultivators all follow the path that is most in line with their true nature and essence. If one attains true immortality and achieves eternal longevity, or can transform into the great Tao itself, it is by not going against one's true nature that cultivators follow the first rule. The great Tao is impartial, and does not distinguish between good and evil. Therefore, helping anyone should be in accordance with one's true nature. At this moment, Chunjun also realized that the situation was not right. He prepared to lead them away so that Shedding Dust could take Qingshu to leave first, but Shedding Dust stopped him. Meow in the air continued to bring up the Verdant Hill Fox race. She said that even though she couldn't represent Verdant Hill, she still understood the thoughts of the elders to some extent. They all recognized Illustrious. Then she pretended to look regretful, and said that the long race had been in seclusion for thousands of years, coinciding with this event. Palace Lord, do you still want to act selfishly? On the other side, Shedding Dust held down Chunjun, who was trying to stop him. Let him stay still here. Shortly after, a voice echoed. Punglai disciple Shedding Dust pays respects to Palace Lord Ao and Fairy Meow. Shedding Dust is no longer hiding. He knows it's time for him to come out. If he waits any longer, he may miss the chance to speak up. Meower didn't expect that shedding dust would dare to come out, and couldn't help but feel somewhat surprised. She said, "Little Taoist, are you trying to discuss the Tao in front of Palace Lord with me?" Shedding Dust didn't even look at her, but continued walking forward, talking to Palace Lord Ao Miao. 3,000 years ago, the ancient vicious beast Shangliu, the devouring serpent of doom, severely wounded the long race of the three seas. Minor Dao may know where it is. When Ao Miao heard the word shedding dust, there was a slight change on the face of Gujing Wubo. The crowd fell silent for a moment, and Ao Miao Meower stood in midair, facing shedding dust alone. He was gambling on whether this was something that Palace Lord Ao Miao cared more about. If he lost the bet, they would also perish here. Chun Jun on the side was also nervous, sweating profusely. After a moment, Ao Miao slowly spoke. "What do you want?" Meower was greatly surprised by the words. Shedding Dust continued, "Please have the Palace Lord send my two martial nephews back to Penglai Minor Dao, and keep them there until they help the Dragon Palace find Shangliu, the devouring serpent of doom." Chun Jun Meower immediately spoke up in unison, saying, "No way!" However, Shedding Dust slowly reached out his finger, pointing to the sky as a pledge, and said, "I, Minor Dao, vow to swear by the heart of Dao." Chen Auding, Great Chen Dynasty Princess. She was abandoned in Reed Marsh for being born with 6 fingers. Later, she was picked up by an elderly swordsman named Chun, who named her Audinger. Now she is the 6th disciple under the Kunlun Sword Pavilion and the Drunken Sword Immortal's teachings. A few years ago, she followed 4 senior brother Lietherlin. She was chased and killed in the southwest of Mang Mountain, among the 10,000 mountains. To protect thought, she detonated Divine Sky Thunderbolt. To protect herself, luckily her life was saved by Infant Dan in her hand, but her body suffered severe damage. After returning to Kunlun, she was placed in the Jade Pool, using the Golden Lotus to recover from her injuries, but this sleep lasted for 3 years. At this time, Kunlun Mountain is different from the past because for certain reasons, the young disciples within the sect have to take turns going down the mountain. The little immortal child in pink clothes is asking the 2 senior sisters about the fun things in the mortal world. The 2 senior sisters sternly teach her, "We are not going to play." The little girl then puts on a serious expression and says, "I know. We are going to uphold justice and prevent demons from causing trouble in the mortal world." But she soon adds, "I envy you senior sisters for being able to be with Mingzhu Martial Uncle, unlike me, who has to be with the Sword Pavilion." Upon hearing this, the 2 senior sisters look somewhat melancholic and say, "Do you know how much senior sisters envy you for being able to walk with Lee Etherlin Martial Uncle?" At this moment, Lee Etherlin on the other side sneezed loudly. But then he sighed and said, "Where was I just now? Oh right, you, 5th senior brother." For the past 3 years, Lee Etherlin would always come to chat with Audinger. He said to Audinger, 5th senior brother Yuchi had already descended the mountain 2 years ago, while senior brother Mingju has also advanced to the Golden Core stage. Lee Etherlin said she would wake Audinger up, but Lee Etherlin also mentioned that Audinger slept too soundly. Senior brother is afraid that they might miss the appointment, because he has already applied to be stationed at Mang Mountain and will set off tomorrow. As for when he will return, it will probably have to wait until the heaven and earth annihilation is over. Mang Mountain is one of the tens of thousands of large mountains in the southwest. Lady Longvenerable has guarded the place for hundreds of years. She is to spread the message of Celestian. The body falls, and the Tao is lost. He said to Audinger, "We should also do our best to repay the favor, right?" Then he told Audinger about what happened after she fell unconscious, the group of bad people who were chasing them, called Celestian, who wanted to slaughter all mortals to protect the cultivators and prevent heaven and earth annihilation. And now, the immortal sect led by Kunlun and Penglai intends to hunt down Celestian to survive this impending heaven and earth annihilation. He told Audinger to sleep in, and not hurry to get up. Sleeping more is good. Being able to sleep through heaven and earth annihilation is even better. Lee Etherland didn't notice this at the time. Ottinger, who was originally lying calmly in the jade pool, suddenly moved her fingers. At the same time, shedding dust in the sea of consciousness was staring blankly at the spiritual sense left by Otting. "Brother, it's my turn to find you this time." Shedding dust sighed softly, blaming Ottinger for stirring up multiple layers of wounds. Immersed in spiritual sense for 3 years. If I hadn't been able to sense your vitality and breath, I'm afraid you would have perished. Shedding dust felt slightly relieved that you have already entered Kunlun. Surely there will be mentors taking care of you. Later, shedding dust conjured a map in the sea of consciousness. He checked Ottinger's location, and found that she is currently deep in the desolate sea. The distance between them is truly vast. But at the same time, shedding dust has also made up his mind to quickly find Shangyu, the devouring serpent of doom, in order to fulfill that mental demon oath. Just then, a voice sounded. "What oath?" A little hand also raised above the head and stretched lazily, looking back at shedding dust, only to see the familiar appearance facing him with a grimace. Then one sentence, "Brother!" was shouted crisply and melodiously, shedding dust staring blankly at the sister in front of him. Ottinger then became serious again and said, "Didn't you say you shouldn't swear casually?" Divine Sky Thunderbolt destroyed her mortal body woke up after 3 years. Ottinger, who slept in the jade pool for 3 years, finally woke up. She entered the sea of consciousness immediately. She met her long-lost brother. The siblings are exchanging information over here. And at this time, Kunlun Jade Purity Palace is also planning something big. Linlang's father is sitting in the main hall. He found out through spellcraft messaging. Everything is going according to his plan. He then passed on the message to Master Linlang. Chuyu Mountain was also convinced by Linlang's father. Their way is in line with nature, let alone trying to exterminate mortals. Even if exterminating ants could ensure that cultivators are no longer disturbed by the annihilation of heaven and earth, they cannot agree. There are divine transformation cultivators from Kunlun and Penglai overseeing above. More than 60% of the immortal cultivation sects below have agreed to join Skynet and send their disciples to the mortal world to guard and monitor. Thus, the hunting momentum is just beginning. Junior sister reminded him that we didn't ask our allies to make a mental demon oath. Linlang's father said, "We judge by actions, not by intentions." Although that's true, Junior sister is still somewhat worried. She asked senior brother if he truly believes it can permanently prevent heaven and earth annihilation. Linlang's father said that Kangwu the sage firmly believes that a way out can be found, and that using a sword against the weaker is not the only solution. He believes that like Kangwu the sage, he also believes that he will find a solution. It's just that, it will take time. At this time, Linlang is with his mother on the other side. The mother seemed to have a sense of intuition. The couple hasn't seen each other for many years. Linlang is comforting his mother, saying that what his father is doing now is very dangerous. There may be many hidden enemies. They cannot harm Dad, and Dad dare not take risks to expose himself in front of them. That's why Linlang didn't say anything. Mother only said, "It's only been 3 years. There's still a long way to go." Meanwhile, on the other side, Ottinger told her brother about what happened back then with Thought in the shedding dust. Unexpectedly, this cataclysm was actually triggered by her. Ottinger has been in a coma for 3 years, and naturally doesn't know about this cataclysm. Shedding Dust patiently explained to his younger sister, saying that it could be considered a cataclysm involving all cultivators. However, he said that it was a good thing to trigger it earlier, as it would also help save ordinary people. After hearing this, Ottinger was somewhat unhappy. She asked, "What? Are cultivators not human just because they have more power? What difference is there between us and ordinary people?" Shedding Dust understood his younger sister's thoughts. He explained that indeed many cultivators are not human beings. It's just that the cosmic laws favor humans, and they have to cultivate using human bodies. Then he spoke earnestly to Ottinger. "You do have the power to control the fate of mortal beings. You are no longer an ordinary person. You must remember this in order to clarify your path. After listening, Ottinger, she lowered her head in a somewhat lonely manner and said, I understand. But afterwards, Shedding Dust touched Ottinger's head with his hand. Ottinger asked him what he was doing. Shedding Dust said somewhat affectionately, as a token of my brotherly affection, and then added. Ottinger covered her head, looking puzzled, while Shedding Dust explained, It's a congratulatory gift for your foundation establishment. But Ottinger said, I want you now, where are you? At the same time, Punlai Cloud Mist widened her eyes and said, Young Martial Uncle is at Clouded Dream Lake? She asked Chuyu next to her, as she heard Sky Winter Grandpa say that Sean the Cloudborn Martial Uncle goes to Mountain Gus Hin every day to scold and shout. She even thought Shedding Dust was there. Chuyu told her that Shedding Dust is searching for an item that may help reconcile the long race with us, as some people are not happy about it, and so his whereabouts are a mystery to outsiders. Although Cloud Mist injured the primordial essence and fell from the stage, this time she was inspired by the primordial essence spiritual chi spread by the sage Kan Wu. Not only did she recover her human form, but she also gained insight into healing-related cultivation techniques and made great progress, benefiting greatly from it. Therefore, Shui wants to send her to Shedding Dust and ask if she is willing. Cloud Mist said seriously, Patriarch Cloud Mist is willing to go. On the other hand, Shedding Dust disagreed with Ottinger coming over to find him. Ottinger looked angry and asked him why. Shedding Dust inquired whether she knew where Clouded Dream Lake was at the moment. Ottinger, puzzled, and Shedding Dust replied, In the southwest, deep within the 10,000 mountains. Ottinger was born with 6 fingers. But having 6 fingers was considered inauspicious. When she was just born, her mother cut off one of her fingers. But little did she know, Ottinger, who took a nap in the jade pool. Her severed finger grew back again. This matter. It all started from when she woke up at Jade Pool. Ottinger slept for 3 years in one go. The first thing she did when she woke up was to run to the Sea of Consciousness to find her brother. Ottinger originally wanted to ask him where he was so she could find him herself. However, Shedding Dust has to go to Clouded Dream Lake with Palace Lord Aomiao because of the mental demon oath. It means deep in the southwest 10,000 mountains. Shedding Dust doesn't want her little sister to take risks, so she absolutely forbids her from coming. Ottinger looks puzzled. Shedding Dust has no choice but to explain to her. She said, as the little ant, who caused this cataclysm, she is probably already on Celestian's special watch list. Although they may not be actively seeking to deal with this little ant, if she were to come knocking on their door herself, that would be considered provocation. Shedding Dust said that the entire 10,000 mountains are now controlled by the Celestian forces, and even the Sky Net of Kunlun finds it difficult to infiltrate. They find it easier to kill her there than to kill a chicken. And even if she manages to find Shedding Dust alive, it would be like exposing his whereabouts to the Celestian. They would not be happy to see Punlai make friends with Shedding Dust at the long race. Ottinger, would you be happy to see your brother lose his life? Ottinger then covered his small head, kept shaking it vigorously, and said, I'm not going. Shedding Dust said, That's great. But Ottinger timidly raised his head again and said, I mean if... What if I won't be recognized? She said I could disguise myself. After all, I have grown up quite a bit. Shedding Dust pinched the bridge of his nose in frustration, saying, If it's not because you are neglecting your studies, then there must be something wrong with the Kunlun Disciple Academy. Later, Shedding Dust enlightened Ottinger, saying that cultivators have various tools and transformation pills that can easily change their appearance and are not difficult to obtain. Identifying a cultivator is not just about their appearance. Spiritual chi, soul, and spirit, their primary spirit artifact, and their way of acting are all ways to distinguish them, especially their own spiritual chi. The fluctuations of spiritual chi for each cultivator are unique, and there are various cultivation techniques or spirit artifact talismans that can be used for identification and recording. He said you have exchanged blows with them several times. Can you guarantee that it was not recorded? Ottinger said no. Shedding Dust said then stay away from the 100,000 mountains in the southwest. Ottinger said okay. Shedding Dust asked Ottinger to stay well in Kunlun and said, when the matters of the brothers are settled, he will come to find you. Ottinger nodded in acknowledgement. She then exited the sea of consciousness, feeling somewhat shocked when she saw a pool of golden lotus. She couldn't help but feel amazed. Her limbs had all grown back as if they were never severed. She felt no discomfort at all. She was even calculating in her mind how many spiritual stones this would cost. Just as she was thinking about it, she took another leap forward, but this time she didn't quite control her strength, almost stumbling and falling. She looked at her hands, feeling lighter and more powerful. Suddenly she exclaimed, but just at that moment, a cough interrupted Ottinger was treasure-gathering Uncle Master. Ottinger knelt on the ground and asked Uncle Master, "Did you use Gold Lotus to heal me?" Treasure-gathering grumpily replied, "Stop talking nonsense." Ottinger looked up and sincerely said, "Thank you, Uncle Master. However, Later, she raised her hand and said, "Could it be that the healing effect was too good? I actually grew a sixth finger." Treasure Gathering widened his eyes at her hand, then let out a thunderous roar. "What new trick is this about withholding medical expenses? I'm determined not to be fooled. Spiritual stone, not even one less allowed? Not one less." Later, Ottinger ran to Drunken Sword Immortal and showed him her hand, saying that her 6 fingers were natural, but one was cut off when she was young, and it grew back after this treatment. Ottinger then asked Drunken Sword Immortal if there were any harms. "Just now, you told Uncle Master that it's about vein disorder and skeletal deformation." Drunken Sword Immortal took a sip of wine and said it's nothing, just trying to scare him, and added that there's no benefit to having 6 fingers, so he could trim it off if it bothers him. Ottinger looked helpless as Drunken Sword Immortal took a sip of wine and thought for a moment. He then said that having 6 fingers does have its benefits. It allowed you to successfully fleece a sheep from that stingy person, so it's enough for you to practice swordsmanship. After listening, Ottinger's eyes were filled with stars. She suddenly threw herself onto Sherfu's body. "Are you serious?" "Sherfu?" Drunken Sword Immortal told her not to mess around. "Don't mess around with me." "Ah! When has what Sherfu said ever been false?" "He handed over your spoils." Saying that, he took out a bangle and a pair of earrings from his arms. When Ottinger took this back, if it weren't for her being at the chi refining stage, Drunken Sword Immortal would have thought she had robbed a sect. According to the sect's requirements, disciples must hand over 1/10 of their gains to the sect. Drunken Sword Immortal has already paid this on her behalf. This bracelet is the beast-controlling bracelet, but all the spiritual beasts inside have died. Drunken Sword Immortal has also helped Ottinger sell them as materials. The earrings of this bracelet were also given to Otting. Drunken Sword Immortal said they are the main material for forging a sword. He has exchanged some of the contents in the earrings for Otting. Tomorrow, she can go to the Dan platform to borrow the tripod and have the sword forged before she goes down the mountain. Ottinger excitedly agreed, but Drunken Sword Immortal sighed and said, "I have decided to go to the Great Qin Dynasty." Ottinger replied, "Okay, since all the disciples must protect the mortal world, I will go to the Great Qin Dynasty." She said she is also a person of the Great Qin Dynasty, and she needs to go see her grandpa. If she had not been captured by Lady Long Venerable halfway, she should have gone 3 years ago. Drunken Sword Immortal said that it's a good idea. Almost the entire Great Qin Dynasty is under the Skynet, and even the Celestians cannot produce demons. Then he looked into the distance and said, "Throughout history, looking at the world, those who can provoke a bunch of enemies at the Foundation establishment, no chi refining level, are there only disciples at the divine transformation stage like you?" He then raised his large palm and patted Ottinger on the back of her head with a pat. He said, "You really make your master proud." He then picked up the wine jug and took a sip of wine. Ottinger stood shaking and rubbing her head on the side. Astronomical song of walking the sky. tells the story of siblings who were born of the same mother, yet their fates are as different as clouds and mud. They were separated from a young age. An Easterner named Punlai embarked on the long path of immortality with the immortal elder. An abandoned wasteland wanderer journeyed through the mortal world with the old swordsman. The siblings have been separated for over a decade. After enduring hardships, they may soon be reunited. Please present the latest episode of Astronomical Song of Walking the Sky. After Shedding Dust meets Ottinger in the Sea of Consciousness. The two of them then withdrew separately. Shedding Dust is going to Clouded Dream Lake. Ottinger went to look for Sherfu. Now all of Sherfu's disciples are going down the mountain to protect the mortal world. Ottinger told Sherfu that she wants to go protect the great Qin dynasty. Sherfu has prepared the sword-forging materials for her and asked her to borrow a cauldron at Dan platform tomorrow. He told her to forge the sword before descending the mountain. At the same time, in the vast mountains of the southwest. The scenery here is picturesque, but it is stained with blood. A boy is leaning against a huge rock with blood still flowing from his legs, and this happens to be. Passing by, Shedding Dust saw the boy and asked him, "Are you injured, little brother?" The boy cried out in pain, and Shedding Dust, after checking on him, said it seemed like he couldn't walk by himself and asked where his home was, ready to take him back. The boy was moved to tears and he said, "Our village is just behind the mountain." On the way he asked, "Gracious Lord Brother, are you here to collect medicinal herbs too?" Shedding Dust asked, "Are there many people gathering medicinal herbs here?" The boy replied, "Yes, for miles around, the medicinal herbs in our mountains are the best." Shedding Dust said, "No wonder you speak Mandarin so well." The boy chuckled and said, "It's because my older sister taught me." Shedding Dust also asked him if there were many poisonous substances in the mountains here. The boy said, "There are indeed many poisonous substances, always mixed with medicinal herbs. In our village, many have died from them. Just now, if it weren't for gracious Lord Brother saving me, I would have become snake dung." A few people climbed over the hill, the boy said. "There, that is our village." At the same time, on the Kuinluandan platform, a little boy with an incredulous face said, "Ottinger Martial Uncle, are you trying to have me take over the furnace?" Ottinger replied, "Yes, Senior Brother in charge said that many disciples have gone down the mountain recently, and the Dan platform is crowded. Only your cave is still empty." However, the boy lowered his head in loneliness and said, "Before I defected from the Bailey clan to Kuinluan, I was the disciple of Bailey Meng Elder." Ottinger then asked, "So, you don't know how to craft tools?" The boy was stunned by these words and said, "Huh? No, I can." Ottinger smiled and said, "That's good then." Then she threw the jade pendant and the fingers all to him, saying, "These are the techniques and materials for refining the sword. I have prepared some materials, so be careful not to mess up the refining process." The little boy stared blankly at Ottinger. After Ottinger finished speaking, he was already sobbing uncontrollably, and he kept responding, "Yes, Ottinger Martial Uncle." "But Ottinger can't stand seeing others cry," she said in a fluster. "Don't cry, I won't make you compensate for the materials." But the little boy kept apologizing. Ottinger said, "We haven't started yet. What are you apologizing for?" At this time, the boy on the other side, with his feet already bandaged, Shedding Dust said, "Don't get them wet. They will heal in about a month." The boy wanted to thank Shedding Dust by having his younger brother cook them a bowl of sweet soup, but Shedding Dust said there was no need and mentioned that they would leave soon. However, the boy looked terrified and said that if they couldn't stay for a meal, the uncles might come back and might break his other leg. Besides, he mentioned that the sun was setting, and it would be difficult to travel through the mountains at night. Shedding Dust looked around and said that the village was so quiet, it turned out that all the adults had gone out. The boy said, "Yes, there are those collecting herbs and those hunting. They only return home after dark." Shedding Dust asked him if they don't cultivate crops here. The boy said they used to, but later everyone felt They make more money selling herbs to people from the mainland, so everyone went into the mountains to collect herbs. Now, the land has all been abandoned. Then he called out, Minar, and told her to bring a red can of candy, and put a lot of it. At this moment, Shedding Dust seemed to have something on his mind. He looked at the setting sun in the distance. At the same time, the alchemy furnace on the other side was bubbling. Ottinger was concentrating intently, staring at it. At this moment, the boy by the stove said, Quick, young martial uncle, please sprinkle a few drops of your vital blood now. Ottinger seems to be suspicious. She asked, Vital blood? The boy replied, Yes, this will help you connect with the spirit artifact more closely and control it as if it were an extension of your own arm. She instantly struck a hand sign, and sword chi surged from her fingertips. The next second, she directly chopped off her own sixth finger. But this also caused her unbearable pain, tears streaming down her face. Her finger flew into the alchemical furnace. But the little alchemy apprentice beside her suddenly fainted. Ottinger grabbed him and asked what happened. You need to control the fire. But the boy apologized and said, I'm sorry, I feel faint. Just at that moment, the sizzling sound inside the alchemy furnace grew louder and louder. Ottinger was still staring blankly at the boy. But with a bang, the alchemy furnace exploded. At the same time, the bowl in Shedding Dust's hand fell to the ground, and both of them were spitting out blood from their mouths, unable to get up. And the rescued little boy. He, however, walked in carrying a knife. On the other side, the Kunlun Dan platform stove exploded, but the sword remained intact. The sword emitted a faint cold light, with its hilt shaped like a black lotus flower. Ottinger, the room where the two people were just staying in, got blown up. But she stared blankly at the sword and said, So pretty. I am Ottinger. Ottinger who travels through the mortal world with Grandpa. Ottinger who cultivates at Kunlun Sword Pavilion with Sherfu. After sleeping for 3 years at Jade Pool, I finally woke up. The first thing I did was, of course, it is to go to the Sea of Consciousness to find my brother. But my brother told me that he was going to Clouded Dream Lake. The most annoying thing is that he didn't let me go with him. There's nothing I can do. After all, he is my older brother, so I can only obey him. At the same time, I also found something interesting. I grew a sixth finger. Master said I might be born with it. He also told me, during the 2 years when I was asleep, earth-shaking changes occurred outside. All disciples have to descend the mountain to protect the mortal realm, so naturally, I must go to the Great Qin dynasty. But I am currently lacking a sword. So I went to the Dan platform. The little Taoist child who refines swords told me that he needs a few drops of my vital blood to improve the sword's compatibility. I thought to myself, this request for vital blood seems insincere. However, 3 days ago, my uncle, who is a 7th rank Imperial Blade Guard, the mighty king of mouth strength, and he doesn't get along well with his sky realm. What about you? Su Qian, in a whimsical manner, asked. What about you?